This video is all about the carnivore diet and the subject of fruit. So the question is it okay to be on carnivore diet and then to start adding in some fruit like many people seem to do? So today I want to unpack this subject a little bit and talk about some reasons why you might do it and some reasons why you might not do it, and then to give you 4 of my biggest issues that I personally have with fruit on the carnivore diet. Now, in all of this video today, my intention is not to tell you what to do, but rather to empower you with some information so that you are more equipped to make your own choice. So that's what this video is about. So firstly, why might somebody be tempted to add in some fruit on the carnivore diet? Well, there's some immediate reasons that come to mind. It gives the diet more variety, and some people are really craving variety on the carnivore diet. It may be a sense that somebody has that they need more fibre in their diet for digestive issues particularly, and that might be the reason for adding fruit. It could be that you want to increase the number of nutrients and particularly some of the vitamins that you have heard that are not available in meat. I don't know that that's entirely true, but many people, for instance, get concerned about vitamin C. And also, there are some people that believe that fruit will give them a quick burst of energy, particularly if they're performing in any sort of sport or physical activity. I remember back in my younger days when I did a lot of marathon bike riding, when we were flagging on the bike, we would often pull out a banana because it was full of carbs and energy and would give us an instant energy spike. And that may be a reason why you're considering fruit. There's also a number of good reasons why you might not want fruit in your carnivore diet. And the first of these is that fruit can very easily give you spikes up and down in your blood sugar levels, and that can lead to all sorts of issues. Also, if you start adding fruit and get that sweet taste of the fruit, it may set off a new whole set of cravings for more sweetness and more variety in your diet. And once you've taken one step, it's easy to take a second step. And for those people who are concerned about weight loss, then fruit can certainly mess up your ketosis and your speed of weight loss. And that's another issue for some people. Carnivore is ultimately an elimination diet. It's one of its main advantages, I think. Now, there's a lot of good reasons why you might want to try an elimination diet, particularly if you're having any trouble with allergies or certain conditions that you think might be diet-related. And when you go to a just meat diet, you're eliminating everything but meat, and you're going to work out what it is that is causing you the problems. So let me talk about 4 of the big issues with fruit. The first one is a thing called oxalates. Oxalates had been relatively unheard of to fairly recent days, and certainly came to prominence when Sally Norton published her well-known book Toxic Superfoods, which is really a very thorough and scholarly expose on the topic of oxalates in fruit and vegetables, and certainly worth a read if you're concerned about oxalates. Oxalates are a natural organic acid that are contained in most plants. The oxalates in plants have a number of functions for the plant, but the primary one is for self-defense. It protects the plants against pests. The oxalates can produce a bitter taste in the plant and therefore deter things from eating them. You see, if an animal is in danger, it can run away. A plant cannot run away because it's fixed in the ground, and so a plant defends itself by producing oxalates. The oxalates, as I say, are a defense against pests and also a defense against that plant being eaten by things like humans, you and I. I think Dr. Chaffee has a very famous video called Plants Are Trying to Kill You, and a little bit of a hyperbole there, but the truth is all the same. Plants do contain oxalate, and oxalates are there to discourage you from eating the plant. Now, oxalates can be a particular problem for us human beings because they attach themselves to minerals in the body and cause crystals to form. And these crystals can lead to the formation of other problems, particularly kidney stones. So if you're somebody who is concerned about kidney stones or has a history of kidney stones, then oxalates should be a really big concern for you to follow up and to know more about. Oxalates can also be a concern for people with kidney issues or for people with gut issues. One thing I didn't know until I started to do some research for this video is that our own human body can produce oxalates. There's a number of things that cause it to produce oxalates, but the primary one is an excess amount of vitamin C in our body. This is why it could be a concern if you overload yourself on vitamin C. Some people on the carnivore diet think, well, I'm not getting vitamin C from meat, so I should supplement, and they go overboard on vitamin C, and that can lead to your own body producing oxalates, which of course is going to lead to other problems. There are some fruits that are high in oxalates. Let me give you some example. I'm talking about fruits that have more than 10 milligrams of oxalates in them. These are berries, particularly blackberries and raspberries, kiwi fruit and figs, all very high in oxalates. On the other end of the spectrum, there are some fruits that have less than 5 milligrams of oxalates, in other words, very low oxalate level, and these are things like apples, bananas, peaches, pears, nectarines, and pineapples. So that just gives you a little bit of a summary on the issue of oxalates. The second issue that you're going to encounter with fruit is the whole issue of carbohydrates, and this is one we are very familiar with when we're on the carnivore diet. When we start carnivore, our goal and our task in choosing an all-meat diet is that we want to totally eliminate carbs from our body, and for good reason. You see, carbohydrates are broken down by our body to form glucose. And this glucose production, in turn, produces an increase in the hormone insulin made by our pancreas in our bodies. Now, when we are eating carbohydrates, we're going to have an increase in glucose and, in turn, an increase in insulin. So our body will use the glucose for energy. And the glucose that are not being used for energy will be stored in your body as good old fat. Another issue with carbs is that they're going to cause your blood sugar levels to go up and down like a yo-yo. And if you're taking your blood sugar levels or you have one of those continuous glucose monitors, you'll see that you have a piece of fruit, you eat some carbs, and your blood sugar is going to go up, and then it's going to come down, and then it's going to go up again next time you have carbs. And so you get this up and down level. Now, that up and down level is going to cause problems in your body. Number one, it's going to cause cravings, because once the body's had some carbs, which in turn becomes the glucose, the sugar in essence, then it's going to want more. So your cravings are going to increase, sometimes quite significantly, once you start adding in any sorts of carbs again. And we go back to that yo-yo way of eating. Another major concern that is just being talked about in more recent days is the effect of sugar spikes on the brain. And they're only now discovering, in some of the latest books being written about the brain and food, is that the up and down sugar levels can affect your cognitive ability, things like mental clarity, and it becomes quite a serious issue when you start talking about the brain. So let me give you some fruits that are high in carbs. That is more than 100 milligrams per serve, or per usually a piece of fruit. Top of this list would be dried fruits. Now, these have the greatest measure of carbs of all. Anything dried, dried apricots, dried apple, dried mango, any of that dried fruit is going to be extremely high in carbohydrates. But then you have things like bananas that I mentioned earlier. They're high in carbs. So are mangoes, and so are figs. All very high in carbs. Now, if you're looking for some fruit that is very low in carbs, they certainly exist. And the fruits that have less than 10 milligrams of carbs per serve would be fruits like berries, watermelon, peaches, avocado and lime, all contain very low levels of carb. So that's the second big issue. So we've talked about oxalates and carbs, and the third big issue with fruit is the whole issue of fructose. People often refer to the natural sugar in fruit, but what they're actually referring to is fructose. Now, when fructose entered the body, it's broken down by the liver into glucose. So the fructose goes into your body, it goes to the liver, and the liver breaks it down into glucose because your body can use glucose for energy, as we've just said. Now, fructose does not raise your blood sugar level anywhere near as much as the glucose from carbohydrates do, but what it does do is that it can spike your insulin production, and that in turn can lead to things like insulin resistance. Now, all of this, what I'm talking about, is handled by the liver. And if there's an excess of fructose, glucose, that's being produced by the liver, it can cause you to have fatty liver. You see, these are all metabolic issues. Once we're starting talking about fatty liver and insulin resistance, which, if unchecked, can lead to diabetes, these are all metabolic health issues that are of a great concern to many of us, or they should be, because diabetes is no light thing. It's a hideous disease that we want to avoid at all cost. My whole journey on carnivore began when the doctor sat me down and said, "You've got a fatty liver, you are insulin resistant, and you are pre-diabetic." That was my wake-up call to start the carnivore diet. We need to say that the consumption of fructose in fruit, it's not very satiating. You compare it to eating a piece of steak, for instance. Steak is very satiating, and when you've had a bit of steak, you know you've eaten and you feel full and you're no longer hungry. But if you have a piece of fruit, it often produces cravings for more fruit. You see, once the body tastes that sugar, tastes that sweetness, it wants more. The other problem here is that the consumption of fructose can cause your triglycerides to increase, and that's not a good thing. So what fruits are high in fructose? Let me give you a few. Dates, dried figs, raisins, and grapes are all extremely high in fructose. They have more than 15 milligrams per serving, whereas there are some fruits that are very low in fructose. By low, we mean 5 to 10 milligrams per serving. So they're still there, they're just in lower quantities. And this would include things like oranges, peaches, plums, kiwi fruit, blueberries, watermelon. So I hope you're beginning to see that, in one of the headings we talk about, a fruit may appear to be okay, but then on the next list, it appears not to be okay. And this is why we've got to do our research carefully when we're talking about fruit. I want to raise just one more issue with fruit. Many of the really sweet fruits that we think of today, think of things like strawberries, very sweet, watermelon, sweet, apples, often very sweet. A lot of these fruits were never sweet in their original form, and they've only become sweet because they've been modified and selectively bred and sometimes genetically modified to make them sweet, to make them bigger and sweeter and more attractive for human consumption. The problem is that when they do this, they not only increase the fructose enormously because they're adding in more sugar, more sweetness into the fruit, but that in turn also reduces the really good nutrients and vitamins and minerals in the fruit significantly. So you get more natural sugar, but less vitamins and minerals in the fruits that have been modified to be sold as sweet. Think of an apple. Let me just give you a quick summary on an apple, because this is what you have got to do with any fruit that you're deciding to eat, whether you're eating berries or a bit of banana or an apple or a pineapple or whatever it is. You need to check out each of these things to see what's in it and to see whether those issues are particularly relevant for you in the stage you're at with your diet and your health. So a case study of an apple. Now, an apple is without question, very good for you in some ways. It's packed with vitamins. What's it got in it? It's got a whole lot of the B group vitamins, B1, B2, B3, B6 are all in an apple. So is vitamin C, good levels of vitamin C in an apple. And when we come to oxalates, very low in oxalates, almost no oxalates in an apple. When we come to carbs, however, high in carbs, 25 grams of carbs and 19 grams of sugar. So it's a bit of a mix, isn't it? Certainly some pluses, but some things to be concerned about. So with all the fruit that we eat, we're sort of navigating a bit of a minefield, because it might be really good in one area that I mentioned and really bad in another area. So I would encourage you to arm yourself with information. Like I hear many carnivores saying they're starting to add some berries into their carnivore diet. So berries are very low in fructose and carbs, but they're very high in oxalates. So if oxalates are a concern, you know, what I said about kidney stones and gut issues, etc., if they are a concern, then stay off the berries. You see, what you're doing is balancing one bad against another bad, and you need to choose the less bad for you in your own situation if you're going to add some fruit. I hope you're following this because it's quite important to grasp. So I mentioned Sally Norton's book, Toxic Superfoods, which particularly addresses the subject of oxalates in great detail. Another book that I would recommend to you is a book called The Botany of Desire by Pollan. It's a beautifully written book, and it helps you understand this whole debate about fruit from the plant's point of view or the tree's point of view. And it's certainly worth reading. Pollan, The Botany of Desire. So look, as I said at the start, my intention on the video is not to tell you what to do, but I'm just wanting to kind of empower you to make your own decisions so that you've got information at your fingertips to access and to look at and to study and then to make your own decision, because ultimately it's your health, it's your body, and it's your choice.